In my first video here on YouTube, One Life, One Path, I described my evolving spirituality as remaining on one path, but taking many turns along the way to where I had become. I said, I am the same, just more. And that certainly describes my transformation, both here on YouTube and in my personal spirituality. I am without question more than I ever imagined I would be. I recently received a comment from a viewer who had begun to watch all of my videos again from the very, very beginning. She began with my first video 11 years ago in February of 2013. And I decided, well, wow, I wonder when I had last seen that video, so I decided to take a look. My first impression was I really laughed when I saw it because I was wearing the same clothes that I wore last winter. I guess we crones really like to hold on to our stuff. But other than that, most things about me I feel have changed. I might look the same, I'm older of course. Look, and I really do look older, I get it, but about when I talked about my spirituality, when I talked about what I was sharing, when I was willing to share on YouTube, so much of that had changed. What did I actually learn from watching that video? How have I changed? How have I stayed the same? And that's what I'm going to be talking to you about a little bit today if you're interested, because I think it's relevant to all of us. We all have changed. Somewhere along our journeys, we have changed. We might not feel the change as it happens, but we do change, and when we look back, we see it, right? There's an author who I admire very much. She's now deceased, I believe. Her name is Gail Sheehy. And I want to read a quote from her. She said, "If we don't change, we don't grow. If we don't grow, we really aren't living." And that is so true. Growth is such an important part of life. And people cannot really reach their full potential if they don't grow. If we just stay the same, we just stagnate. Okay? Think about a garden again. Think about a garden. Those little tomato plants that you plant have to grow and grow in order to support the tomato, the fruit that they're going to bear eventually, and the seed that they will eventually bring us for the future plants, right? The first way that I think I have changed that I want to mention here today is my relationship with tarot. Now, I mentioned in that first video, that earlier video, that I had my hoi polloi deck was my most treasured possession. It still is. It is still here on my table. It remains here. I read it from time to time, maybe not as often as I used to, because it's older and I want to preserve it. Some of the cards are getting kind of bent and sorry. In such a little bit of a sorry state. I mean, think about it. It's well over 50 years old at this point. So, but it used to be pretty much my only deck that I thought I needed, right? I want to say now that over the years, I've acquired quite a few other decks. I'm still not a collector of decks. I don't have hundreds, but I do have, you know, a dozen or so decks that I use, maybe 20, I'm not sure. Of tarot decks that I do use pretty regularly. And I consider myself to be a much better reader than I used to be only using one deck. Yes, you can still get by with one tarot deck, and I still stand by that. But if you really want to be a serious reader, I think it is to your benefit to experience as much as you can with some other decks. Now, by that I want to qualify by saying good decks. There's some really crappy decks out there, and they're not going to teach you anything. But you know the difference. If you're a tarot reader, you know the difference when you get a good deck. The one that is more than just pretty pictures, that it has some substance to it, and it adds a little bit more layering to the meaning of the cards. Okay, so that's one way I'm different in tarot. Another way I'm different in tarot is that, yes, I do use oracle cards now. I didn't used to. I use Lenormand from time to time. I even use playing cards from time to time. I enjoy them all. Tarot still is my favorite. But I used to use them pretty much seasonally. I had my summer cards and my winter cards, or I had my light time of the year, light half of the year cards, my dark half of the year cards. I still do that from time to time. But more or less, I read intentionally with my decks. By that I mean that some of my decks read better about certain subjects. If I want to talk about my ancestral roots, or I want to talk about, you know, getting myself in balance with the earth, those kind of things, some of my decks, my more earth-based decks, maybe read for me better than some of my non, you know, some like my cat tarot or whatever. But I do shadow work. I do, you know, checking my balance, especially at the times of the year, the you know, at the equinoxes, or even the solstices. I will check my balance. That's one of my important practices with my tarot. I do that. I communicate with the ancestors, not just at Samhain. It used to be just a fun thing to do at Samhain, but now I do it as a part of a regular study, learning. I'm trying to use some decks to connect with my ancestry. Started as a group with some other groups here online that I'm very interested in. So initially, when we might have said that tarot was mostly used for divination, I hardly consider it a tool of divination anymore. It is, but that's not what it is for me. It is so much more than that. It is a companion in my journey, in my spiritual journey. It helps me with healing. It helps me with understanding things that are going around me. It helps me overcome obstacles. It is so much more than that. It's the same, but it's more. I also use combinations of decks. Years ago, I started a practice of using Rider-Waite-Smith cards and Lenormand cards together in an expanded Celtic cross spread. And I got a lot of slack from a lot of other readers. They said, oh, you can't combine them. They're two different systems. They don't work together. Well, now it seems to be the thing. Everybody's doing it now. Everybody loves to do it. No wonder. It's fun. It gives you a lot of different insight. I also do some things with some adding oracle cards as well. And you've seen that. If you've seen any of my tarot videos, you know one of my favorite combinations is my crow decks. I have 3 crow decks. One is a tarot. One is a regular tarot. One is more of a shadowy kind of a tarot deck, and one is an oracle deck, and they beautifully work well together. It's one of my favorites, and I keep that on my table here with the hoi polloi, those 3 decks. I have always believed in the importance of using intuition while reading tarot. I still do, but over the years I have decided there is a difference in the term intuition of a person reading the tarot, using their intuition, and the intuition of a skilled tarot reader using their intuition in the reading. It's a big difference. It's not just opening cards, looking at pictures and going, oh, this is a pretty, you know, this little bunny is so worried because he can't find his mother. Well, maybe it is, but there's so much more to it than that, and that's why it's important to have a strong foundation of knowledge concerning the meanings of the cards. Well, how they're intended to be meant by the person who drew them, by the person who drew them, and the person who designed the deck. I think that's really important. I don't want to overlook that. And I still think that's important, but I really want to combine the two. Some people get really caught up in the just understanding and learning the meanings of the cards. I'll teach you the meanings of the cards. Trying to worry about the meanings, we forget to use our intuition. And that's something that I teach in my classes all the time. The combination of how you balance your intuition and your skills and your knowledge of the deck, and coming up with the message the cards are trying to give you. The second way that I think I've changed here, my approach on YouTube has changed perhaps, maybe even in my personal practice has changed somewhat, is on the question of spell work. I believe when I was first starting out in 2013, the community here on YouTube, most people were a little hesitant to share things about spells. It was like we were trying to keep secret that fact that we were witches and that we did spells, because the fear that people might take that the wrong way. I'm not sure. But I know a lot of people had a lot of fear about it and didn't talk about it. And anytime anybody talked about it, there was a lot of kerfluffle about it. And I think some people even left YouTube because they were worried about their privacy and repercussions from talking about witch things such as spell work. I never shared them in the beginning. I never shared them. I never kept secret, I don't think. I think even in the first video I did allude to the fact that I did do spells. but I certainly didn't show anybody how to do anything with that knowledge. But now, as a crone, I realize that it is part of my responsibility to share what I know, to share the knowledge that I've learned with people trying to learn. Like, why not? Like, why not? There's always people wanting to learn. I would have liked to have learned myself some things that I had to acquire the knowledge on my own for. People are so worried about starting because they're worried they're going to do it wrong, and they depend on people like me and others like me to guide them and to help them to develop their own skills as witches, not to mimic me, but rather to have the confidence to learn from me and then gather the confidence that they would need to establish their own practice. I also had worked pretty hard over the years to address some of the misconceptions that people have, witches particularly have, about certain things. Like, for instance, binding. Oh, I even have a video where I called it the B word because I was afraid to use the term binding. And I know some of the witches I know personally are just, you can't even use the word around them. They don't want to hear it. I don't go around, I don't want to, give you the wrong idea here. I don't go around just binding people at will, I don't do that. But I consider the practice of restricting people from actions, keeping their actions from hurting other people, to be a legitimate form of witchcraft. One common thing that I do now, and I teach on YouTube, is return to sender. The idea of a return to sender spell. It is not binding a person. It is protecting yourself from any negative energy that is sent. They might want to send towards you to affect you, to hurt you in some way. And then again, return to sender means anything negative goes back on them. It doesn't mean if they wish me a broken leg, I'm going to give them a broken leg back. It's just turning the negativity away from me and, back on them to deal with it in their own way, but not by acting out on me in a negative way, if that makes any sense. I've used the puppets. I have quite a few videos here with puppets that I first of all didn't think I would do, but why not? I think it's a wonderful way of using magic in puppets. I even have one of the thumbnail photos that I use in one of my recent videos. I think it was a tag video that I did with the witch community here on YouTube. It showed a picture of that I had taken. I held a witch's tea here one year at Selwyn, and those were gingerbread puppets that I made. Instead of gingerbread men cookies I turned them into puppets. And it was really fun. I thought it was really fun. The humor of using puppets and cookies with cookies. But anyway, we use puppets for a lot of things, and yes, I have used them. I did a binding spell with puppets here on YouTube. Many years ago I did that, but recently most of my videos using my use of puppets have been for positive things. I did a spell for my husband when he had to have his knee surgery. I made him a puppet. I showed you how I did it out of one of his old socks, which aided him greatly in his healing from his knee energy and then from his knee surgery. And then a little bit later, unfortunately, he had developed cancer, but it helped him to recover and have a successful surgery for that cancer that he was having at the time. They were wonderful. I have used stick puppets. I've showed you how to make stick puppets. We use those in many workings here at the house with some friends to get rid ourselves of things we want to get rid of, or to bring things toward us. We use them all the time. It's just sympathetic magic is all it is. It doesn't have to be negative. It can be positive as well. I also have spoken a lot here on encouraging you to find magic that is uniquely yours. Looking in your own garden, see what kind of things you have magically surrounding you that maybe other people don't have, that are very magical, that can be magical for you. One thing that I use that I don't really know anybody else who has ever used it personally is Daughter. I use Daughter in binding all the time, and I even sell Daughter on my website because I know it's difficult for people to find sometimes. It's very seasonal. I don't use it lately. I only use it when I find it necessary. But it's a type of knot magic, which is a common form of magic that we use. as well. So it doesn't have to be, it doesn't mean just because something seems to have a negative connotation to it, means we can't use it. We can use it as long as we use things in the right way, in a responsible way, where we really don't hurt. We don't wish to hurt people. We wish to maybe stop an action. I think what I want to say basically about spell work. We call witchcraft a practice. It was our practice of witchcraft because we want to develop the craft. We want to develop the ability to use our personal power in combination with the powers around us of other things in nature that we find in nature or with other people, just, but it is an important part of our practice. And the reason I say it's an important part of our practice is we have to practice it. Now, I know a lot of witches. I know quite a few witches. And I want to say that many of the witches that I know are hesitant to do spells. I don't mean they're hesitant, but they don't regularly do spell work. But when there's something that really needs attention, oh, everybody wants to do a spell. Let's all do a spell. Well, think about it. If you never practice the piano, and you decide to put on a recital someday, right? You're not going to be very good. You're not going to be very good. You're not going to be as good as you can be if you were to practice. And the same thing goes with spell work. If you don't practice spell work as a part of your daily practice, it doesn't mean you have to do a practice every day, practice a spell, but regularly use spell work in your practice. By the time when something happens and comes up where you really need the spell, where you really need something to work for you and to get results from that spell, you will know what to do. You will have that power. You will be able to raise power so much faster and so much better. Okay, so it's not something you just put on, and bring out for Sunday dinner, like your good china. It's not. It's something that you should have at your hand and be prepared to do it whenever. And that is very different from when I started out. I didn't say that, and I don't even know that I believed it, but now I know that to be the truth. In the early days of YouTube, I saw what I perceived to be a lot of fear in some of the other witches that were here making videos. And many of them at one point, quite a few of them left. There was an exodus. quite a few pretty notable witches on YouTube. And that might have been perhaps why I was a little hesitant to share some of the things in the beginning. But one thing that it did make me realize was if I was going to stay on YouTube and continue to share and maybe increase what I wanted to share on YouTube, I needed to up my protection. I really needed to up my protection. And from the very beginning, I think I was using witches jars. I can't remember not ever using witches jars or bottles both inside my home and outside my home. I've used them. And I have quite a few videos that show how I do that. My husband also regularly spreads the ash from our fires, our home fires, both in and outside our home, our cooking fires and our heating fires. He collects all the ash from our fire pit, from both our wood stove and our fireplace all year. He collects that ash, and when he has a lot. He used to do it just on certain Sabbaths or whatever, but now he pretty much does it when the buckets are full. When the buckets are full, he will spread some ash, protection ash, around our entire property and around our chicken yard as well. We've also upped our protection of our persons. We use protection in our house for ourselves. We have, other than witches jars, we have witches purses hanging in our doors to protect not only ourselves but people coming in and out of our home, offering them protection. I've showed you how to make purses in different kind of protections for my cats, for my dogs, and even for my chickens. So I have oils, special oils that I use when I go outside the house, especially when I go on the freeway. We have talismans that we carry with us and take in our car. You can actually make some of those. know, I feel very protected. I feel very safe. I have protection everywhere. But I always think that that's another way that a lot of people fall short. They don't think they need to because, well, you know, I don't really do anything that calls for negative attention. Who will ask for trouble? Anybody? Does anybody really ask for trouble? I don't think that's what it's about. It just gives you that state of mind to know that you're protected. There's nothing wrong with that. So there's a lot of ways to do it that you don't have to call attention to yourself to do so, and I show you how to do that. For our dogs, I have designed a sigil, which we have made it put on a tag for them to wear as a form of a talisman, a protective talisman that they wear at all times, so that anytime they go out, they have it. Also, before we go out and about off of the property, I have a special spray that I put on them. Then I showed you how to make that. For my cats, you saw me make a purse many years ago. I have one that hang on their sea porch. That's where they spend, when they're outside, they're on the sea porch. It's just a screened-in porch, but it is, you know, open air to the outside. People come in and go there, coming in from the chicken yard, etc. There's a gargoyle out there that holds a special purse for them. My final point that I wanted to make in how I think maybe my practice or my face here on YouTube, my channel here on YouTube has grown, has changed, has become a little bit more, is through my identification. What kind of a witch am I? I still don't know. I still don't know what I want to call myself. In that first video, I defined myself perhaps as a green witch, and I did so because one book that I have a lot of books, but one book that I have, which is, I think, coincidentally, the only book I ever recommend to other people who, you know, often tags will come up here on YouTube and people want to know what's your favorite book. You have a good book recommendation from somebody. I really hesitate to recommend books because depending on where you are, some books just are not, they don't give you much information, I find. I love books, but maybe not some of the witchcraft books that I see. I don't find them that helpful. People need to find them themselves, I think, because they know what they're looking for. Where you know, it's because we have such a wide array of what kind of witch people want to be. That being said, one book that I think is very beneficial and very helpful for everybody is Anne Moura's Grimoire of a Green Witch. I still recommend it, and it's funny, I have it. I really don't read it, and I really don't use it, but I have read it, and I know it is very, very useful. It has correspondences, it has sample rituals, it is how to do it, to make a talisman, it's how to read the tarot, it's how to, you know, it's so many things that people want to know. Just it's good to get the book just to see if it gives you an idea what you want to study next as far as the craft of being a witch. It's a really good place to drop off from. Now, that's where I got the title Being a Green Witch. But I have to tell you, 13 years ago, I didn't know what I was. I still don't know what I am 13 years later. But I do know I've been through a lot of things. My path has taken a lot of turns. In the very beginning, I was very proud of the fact, for some reason, I thought I was proud to say, I am not Wiccan, I am a solitary witch, I am whatever, you know. People love to say that. I'm just my own independent thing, which I think we all are. I don't think any of us follow a design, and I will say why in a minute. Sometime during that 11 years, I did join a coven. I did join a Wiccan coven. I am technically a high priestess of Wicca. I say technically because not too long ago, within the past year, a few of us from that coven have hived off to form our own coven of sorts, which isn't really a coven. I mean, it's a group of people, because we found the coven, the Wiccan coven that we were in, to be too limiting. It's wonderful. We didn't have anything. There's no problem with the people or anything. I mean, I love them, and I would, you know, love to circle with them again from time to time. But as far as our practice, we wanted something that really reflected the diversity. We wanted something that really expressed the diversity of our own personal beliefs. Okay, so we have things we just share. We share experiences that reflect our own personal styles, and we sort of take turns leading those experiences, which I find really much more helpful. I say technically I'm a Wiccan because I was initiated. I did my years and got my certificates, and I'm a high priestess in Wicca. But I'm also technically a Catholic. If you want to be technical, I was, I was born a Presbyterian. I was baptized. I was a Christian. I became a Catholic, and I was. Once you're Catholic, I don't think you cannot be a Catholic. I don't. They say you can be excommunicated. Well, it's pretty hard to be excommunicated. I don't know if I want to be. I mean, I don't know if I just don't. I don't go to. We don't go to mass, but I just didn't like the church. The spirituality didn't bother me. It was the church I didn't like. Well, that's a whole other story. But my point is, it's just a continuation of the path. One life, one path. I'm just taking different turns. I'm still taking my different turns. But the reason I wanted to bring up the idea about being a green witch is I think maybe I wasn't so much of a green witch then. And I still don't consider myself really a green witch because I don't like to put a label on what I am. I'm just a witch. But I certainly am greener than I ever was, I want to say, because that is the most important part of my practice to me now, my relationship with the earth. I've always been earth-based, but I really didn't understand what that meant. But now I do. I think I do now, at least for me. I know what it means for me. Instead of, my husband says, this is my husband's thought. He says, instead of taking from the earth, if you give the earth what it needs, you will get back what you were looking for in the first place. And I do feel that. I mean, we're all about gathering the herbs to make our herbs and our tinctures, right? To make our, our teas. We're all about, using the crystals that are mined from the earth, the gems and the crystals. We're all about, get excited when we come across a hagstone. We get excited when we come across, you saw how excited I get when, when the earth gives us, when the goddess gives us the gifts at Imbolc, when after the bleak of winter, all these volunteer magical herbs and grasses and plants start to appear in the garden. I did a video on that. Like, go out, if you haven't seen it, you might want to look at that video. But the lessons that connect us, that we connect us with the earth and with everything that lives on this earth with us, is really what my practice is about right now. Bird was a crow. Bird is a crow. I want to say Bird is a crow who came to us and gave us the most magical experience of our lives. I think on a blue moon, actually. And I have a blog post about that, and I've shared it, and I share pictures of Bird here. And a couple years later, we had another experience with another little fledgling, little bird. We call that one. But the reason I bring it up here is, yes, it's a unique experience having this bird depend on you and going through the thing of trying to get the bird strong enough. And what happens with crows is the adult community of crows, when a bird reaches a certain point, an adolescent crow reaches a certain point, they throw them out of the nest, but they encourage them to leave the nest. And sometimes they spend a lot of time screaming and crying on the ground, and the idea is they're going to eventually find their own way. They have to. And when that happens, the other crows are around. They're watching. They're watching over them and taking care. So you really don't want to interfere most of the time in those situations. In this situation with Bird wouldn't leave us alone. Bird was like on us for 2 weeks, at least 2 weeks. I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks. Just pounding on our door with his beak and screaming at everybody up the walk, screaming constantly at us. He wanted attention. He wanted to be honest. Every time we went outside, he would jump on us, which was a funny experience, no doubt. But we kept on trying to encourage the bird to go higher into the trees at night. We didn't bring the bird in ever. We wanted him to go and be safe. He didn't ever want to fly. And he was leaving himself in a vulnerable position. So we have these very tall cypress trees, very tall, that divide our neighbor's property and our property. They're actually her trees. And they go up on the very tip top. And I was watching the other crows up on the very tip top of those cypress trees. And I was thinking, and it gave me a whole lesson on perspection. Getting yourselves into a different area, rising above and looking down, you get a whole new perspective, right? First lesson I learned from the crows. And since that time, I have learned so many lessons from them. I've learned so many lessons from my garden. I have so many lessons from the other animals that inhabit my property and my beaches and my, parks and my neighborhood. My garden teaches me all the time. I can't be a witch alone. I can't be a witch alone. We can't be witches alone. We are dependent on the other inhabitants of the earth. We are dependent on the earth, and we are dependent on the other things that inhabit the earth with us, both people and non, and plants and non. And it is up to us to care for each other. It is up to us to care for them. We don't just take for them. We make sure if they're okay, we're going to be okay. And that's what being green is about. Taking care of the earth so we can be safe on the earth, so we can be taking care of ourselves, right? I have found that the true magic is all around me. It's in my garden, it's in the forest, it's in the mountains, it's at the beaches. It's within all the inhabitants on the earth. I've always had a garden and it provided me food for myself, but now it provides me food for my family, for all my family, for my friends, including my family, including my dogs and my cats, my chickens. And I show you how I do that here on my channel. I learn lessons from the garden. I learn lessons from the inhabitants of my garden, such as bird, and I like to share those here with you on YouTube. I grow herbs and gather them for magical purposes. I show you how I make incense blends. I show you how I use them in spell work, or in sachets, or in poppets, and I show you how I do that here on YouTube. I also show how I use herbs and flowers for medicine. I show you how to make tinctures, how to make potions, how to make salve. And if you want to learn how, I will give you some links at the end of this video where you can learn how here on YouTube. So in the 11 years that I have been here on YouTube, I'm the same in certain ways, but I really am so much more, and I love sharing that with you. And I'd love to be around here for 11 more years. We'll see. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Rebecca, and I wish you blessings.